When you travel with us to Israel, you bring along 50 plus years of expertise, an epic story begun by my father, Adi Gelber. His adventurous spirit is alive in every moment of the experience, and the local relationships he nurtured have endured through the decades to give you incomparable access to the wonder that is Israel. From a behind the scenes tour of the famous Bahas architecture in Tel Aviv to following in the footsteps of Jesus in Jerusalem, from an emotional climax at the Western Wall to a relaxing swim in the Dead Sea. If you think Israel is stuck in biblical history, we'll show you a vibrant, thriving, and dynamic culture with an ultra-modern vibe, an Israeli Silicon Valley filled with successful startups in science, space, security, and medicine. You'll also walk through the ruins in Caesarea, gaze at the Lake of Galilee, marvel at King Herod's Masada, ascend the Mount of Olives, wander through Nazareth and Bethlehem, and feel the centuries flow by, breathing in the fragrances that fill the air. Our custom trips are drawn from a menu of enticing experiences with something interesting for everyone. This is Michael Gelber, CEO, IWorld Travel, inviting you to come and visit my birthplace and experience another memories beyond destination. IWorld Travel. Expect more. Do more.
Good morning to you all. Boker Tov. Welcome to IWorld of Travel webinar. I thank you and I appreciate the time you are taking to joining us to today's webinar. I'm so excited to share with you a country where I was born. I grew up, I was educated. My name is Zehava Biton and I am the VP of Global Sales in IWorld of Travel. But once again, I really would like to welcome the one who are joining us and have joined us yesterday to an amazing presentation we had. And if you are the second times, welcome back. If you are the first time today, welcome to our webinars. Today webinars is the second webinars of a series of 3 webinars. By the end of the webinar, you'll be able to ask questions, but during the presentations, if you have any questions, you just have to write the question in the question box, and we will answer the questions in the end of the webinar. You are all on mute. Our webinar today will be for about 60 to 75 minutes. I hope you will bear with us. We have so much information that we would like to share with you, and definitely such information you'll be able to take with you to hopefully obtain the knowledge and be able to sell Israel in the future. Our guest today is Anat Ben Yosef. She is the director of the Western office of the West part of United States, the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. Amir Orly, he's one of the guides in Israel, and the Rabbi Mark Blazer, the president of the Jewish Life Foundation, JLTV. I will present them in more details later on. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I would like to go to our speaker today, Rabbi Mark Blazer, who is the president of the Jewish Life Foundation. I've known Rabbi Blazer for so many years. Thank you very much, Rabbi, for joining us. I really appreciate your time. I actually know Rabbi Blazer because of his dad. For those of you who are in Los Angeles, I'm sure that you have heard about Phil Blazer, who was a generalist, who was an activist in many ways. I wish that once you will hear his stories, it's incredible. And he was the founder of JLTV, Jewish Life Television, the themes of the Jewish, it's the only one actually in the United States. He was the founder in 2007. But more important, and I think that especially today when we talk about Israel, it's so great to have you, Rabbi Blazer, and talk a little bit about your dad, because he was indeed one of the also pioneers. Rabbi Phil Blazer and Adi Gelberg worked together. We had so many projects together, and definitely they were both giants with their care of Israel and bringing Israel to the knowledge of our communities and the Jewish community. Thank you, Rabbi, please.
It's a pleasure to be a part of this today. And yes, my father was, and still, unfortunately, he's very sick, but he, for many years, in addition to his activism and to the media, was his goal to bring everybody to Israel. And he worked with Adi of blessed memory for many years, going back to the 70s, their passion for bringing as many people to Israel as possible. And it really came about because my father took a life-changing trip to Israel at 17 as a young guy growing up in the San Fernando Valley post-war. He had a chance to go, and it changed his life. And he was convinced that everybody after that, everybody should have a chance to go to Israel. So as he grew his media company and television shows, first started as an hour in Los Angeles, and then, as you heard, is now national on DirecTV and Comcast, Charter, etc. Israel travel was always a big piece of that. And so I grew up with that. My first trips to Israel were actually trips that my father organized back in the early 70s, and taking trips and seeing how people were so inspired by these trips that they it changed their lives. And the common refrain was, "I wish I had gone sooner, but I'm so glad I went." And so as I became a rabbi, when I became a rabbi, I made sure that I followed in that. And I also am a congregational rabbi. I have a congregation in Santa Clarita, California. But we made sure that Israel trips were an important part of our experience. And so since 2006, we've had about 10 trips to Israel for people of all ages. Some of the photos up there you can see of some of the groups that we've taken, where we've gone across the country, and to make Israel travel an important part of our congregational experience. And we've had wonderful experiences working with Zahava. Zahava is an amazing individual, somebody we trust implicitly, and has been able to help us create trips that are affordable and that give us the ability to bring as many people of all ages. As you can see from some of the photos, literally from 1.5 to 90, we've been able to take people over these years. And we're not a large congregation by any stretch of the imagination, but this has been an important part of our success in keeping our community together, because we have a very vibrant and connected congregation, and our people come back from these trips deeply connected with each other, with the land of Israel, to our tradition. And it's a wonderful educational experience. Nothing like being able to teach and pray in the country itself. And so you can see some of the life cycle events that we've been able to create amazing memories. B'nai Mitzvah, I'm looking at Aaron, young Aaron. He was on one, and I look kind of young there too. That was about 15 years ago. That was a trip where we actually had the bar mitzvah service at the southern steps of the wall before the egalitarian section was kind of opened up, which we were able to have. At the bottom right picture, you see the beautiful egalitarian section on the western wall, which is open and allows people to come together, men and women together, to worship at the same western wall that you oftentimes see in the picture. This is a quieter, kind of a really beautiful area where you're able to, in a newly excavated area, to celebrate these life cycle events. And what we found is, if we build a trip around a life cycle event, we're able to guarantee that trip, because while people's travel plans change, if they know that they're having a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah there, they make sure that they're going to be there. The top right picture is an example of another type of event that we had. We had a renewal ceremony, a 20th anniversary renewal ceremony for a wonderful couple, Ralph and Helene. They were able to celebrate at Caesarea with the beautiful Mediterranean in the background, the ruins and the natural and man-made beauty of Caesarea. We were able to have a beautiful renewal. So it's not just B'nai Mitzvah, not bar and bat mitzvahs, but also other types of events. People have a chance to do that. So this was a wedding ceremony that we were able to have there. And what I like to tell people is that I'm a believer in this myself. I was able, as a young man, to celebrate a bar mitzvah at the wall, at the kotel. And I made sure that my own daughters, I have 3 daughters, and the bottom right is my oldest daughter, Rachel. That was back in 2008 that she was able to have her bat mitzvah celebration at the kotel with the rest of my daughters. And then that little girl at the bottom right, at the top, top right, that's Shira. Shira was able to have a service there and at the egalitarian section. That was her reading Torah just a couple of years ago. And we had an opportunity to have all of our daughters and many of their friends celebrate the celebration of reading Torah at the wall. And again, when I was a young man, it was impossible back in the 80s to have a girl be able to read from the Torah at the wall. Now, the egalitarian section, you can, and it was a very moving celebration. And I will tell you, on the left side, that's a picture of the family together, all of my daughters, my wife, and my mother, who, as you can see in that picture, was not well, and to put it mildly. She passed away 3 weeks later, and all she wanted to do, she had a glioblastoma, she had a brain cancer, and was given a 1-year sentence, unfortunately. All she wanted to do was be there at the wall, to be there for my daughter, her granddaughter's bat mitzvah, and she was there. She was able to be there, and that was an example of what I've seen in my experience, that going to Israel, it becomes a mission for people. I can think of no other destination where people say, I have to go. And even though my mother had been to Israel before, going there for her granddaughter's bat mitzvah was something that she was not going to miss. And what can you say? There's no other destination like it. And so that's why when we talk about going to Israel, it's not just about a trip, it's about a life experience. And that is a fairly emotional account of why I do what I do with trips to Israel, and we can't wait to be able to get back. I should say too, there was a picture on the first slide of a very special trip I did to Israel. The right side there, that was a birthright trip that I was able to take young people to. And again, even though we have birthright today, which is a wonderful way for our young people, and now it's been expanded up to 32, our belief is that every person of every age should be able to go to Israel. And so as much as it was an honor to take a group of about 45 young people to Israel, it is, and many of them I had known since they were toddlers, taking people of all ages is something that we're committed to, and to work with IWorld on doing that in the future is very, very important. And we can't wait to go back.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Wow. Once again, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your message. Very strong message, definitely strong connection. And thank you for your support for Israel and understanding the importance to visit Israel. Our next speaker is Anat Ben Yosef. Anat is the director of the Western region of the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. Anat was born in Israel, Jerusalem, Israel, also grew up in Israel, and arrived to United States about 6 years ago. And believe me, 6 years she worked tirelessly to bring Israel to our attention, travel agents and the travel industry community, and has done incredible work. Really, it really gives me a great pleasure to introduce you, and thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for your support through the years. Thank you, Anat. Please.
Hi, so thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for the nice introduction. And I enjoy watching my photo there because it's pre-COVID. So my hair is actually nice and no white hairs. And I mean, that's amazing. I'm really enjoying that. I'm sure we all share the same feeling. Yeah, so as Zahava said, I am based here in LA. My name is Anat Ben Yosef. I'm the Consul for Tourism Affairs. I represent the Israel Ministry of Tourism. It's a governmental entity that works and represents the government of Israel in order to promote travel to Israel from North America, from all over the world. And thanks, Shane. We do have offices all around the country, and actually another sister office in Canada. And all we do is be here for you. We promote, we brand, we market Israel in order for you. Shane, you're running. I mean, I know. I feel like in the Oscars when they're putting in the music. But yeah, so all we do really is to facilitate your way to turn our product, our destination into your product. And that's really important for me to be here today. And thanks, Zava, for inviting me and to talk a little bit about our destination now and in the future. So thank you so much, Rabbi, for this really, really touching presentation. I know your dad. He's been a good friend to us and personally to me, so I really enjoyed that. And a little bit about the country, and Zahava mentioned it before, but yeah, definitely, if we take ourselves back in time about 4.5 months ago, Israel has been in its best place ever. Tourism-wise, and we've really broken every tourism record. 2019 has been amazing with incoming tourists from all over the world. Over 4.5 million visitors to the country from all over the world. Over 1 million just from North America. Most of you know, but just to put it in perspective, Israel is a country the size of New Jersey with about 9 million citizens. So really amazingly blessed with the amount of people visiting and enjoying this journey, this life-changing journey into a destination that it is not just a vacation, it's something else and something more meaningful. And maybe this is something that would tie us back into where we are today, because I feel like if there is something that this period of time has taught us is that we need to do things that are meaningful. And a destination like Israel is not just a trip, it's not just a vacation, it's a journey. It's a spiritual journey, even if you're not observant or religious, it changes you, you and your family and your peers and your congregation and the group that you're going with, no matter who you're going with. This is really a different journey, a different vacation to take. And I'm really happy to be able to really share in a few minutes because we have great speakers later and I don't want to take a lot of your time, but Zahava did ask me to come and talk a little bit about what's going on today with the vision towards the future. So we're definitely getting ready for the day after. And I love this photo because I know that you can see that they're smiling underneath those masks, and we all have to kind of get used to a new normal, quote unquote, and we're slowly moving towards that new normal, new world. And in the travel world, I would say that the threshold would be, if we travel, it needs to count. It needs to really be something that is worth it. And again, Israel is one of those destinations that really are worth it, worth the trip, worth the journey, worth the experience. So just in a few words, what's going on now in Israel, and we can maybe move to the next slide. Some of you are more connected to what's going on in Israel right now. Just to kind of keep everyone in the loop, Israel was one of the first countries to kind of flatten the curve earlier in the pandemic situation. So we did shut down for several weeks, 2 or 3 weeks earlier this year around April, but then we kind of reopened everything again domestically. This week we're having a little setback, and we are kind of rolling back a little bit, because naturally, as you open the market and as you go back to schools and workplace and so forth, then we are experiencing a little peak with the COVID situation, but we are kind of keeping everything hopefully under control. What we've done, because again, I'm sure that you are reading in the news, but just kind of share this information. We were one of the countries that were first to really see what's going on and start working on new procedures, new protocols. And we did establish a new protocol called the Purple Standard. And the Purple Standard is a set of rules and regulations that all the tourism entities have to follow. It's not a law, it's a recommendation, but I will tell you that especially in the travel world, we do see a lot of compliance. Bottom line is that we are all getting adjusted into this new normal. And I'm hearing myself a couple of times. Okay, good. We're all getting adjusted. Shane, is everyone hearing me?
Yes, you can continue.
So yeah, I heard myself like, okay, I thought you guys lost me. I'm sorry. So the good thing about the fact that this Purple Standard is kind of established throughout Israel is the fact that the market is getting ready. Though we are not open to incoming tourism yet, only Israeli passport holders are allowed to get into the country nowadays. We still don't have a specific date when we are going to be reopening for tourists to come. We are already ready for that day after. So all the establishments, the hotels, the touristic sites, the airports, everywhere they're learning and are ready to work under those procedures, under this new normal. So when that day comes, when we are ready to reopen and to receive tourists, we're already working under those regulations and standards. So this is ready for you to come when the day comes. Next slide, you can see this is like a list of airlines that have flown to Israel pre-COVID-19. There has been some, rollback and setback, and we are reading in the news every day that different airlines are changing a little bit. However, note in the left side of the screen how many airlines and how many routes and flights are operating today. The airlines, if it's the American Legacy Airlines, if it's European Airlines, they believe in the destination, and the airlift is always there. United never stopped flying out of New York, and they're this week beginning to fly back from San Francisco, a very successful flight. El Al is doing sporadically flights, and they are in a process of reorganization. So hopefully we'll have new flights with El Al from different hubs in the US. Delta renewed their flights from JFK earlier last month. Air Canada renewed their flights. That's a great connection also. And again, the European countries, if it's Lufthansa, if it's agent from Greece, it's a big call of faith in the destination. The fact that all those airlines are operating flights to Israel on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, means that this is a destination with potential. So again, with that, it's another part of the infrastructure of us being ready for that day after when the day comes. So we're ready to go as soon as we can. In the next slide, we can see also our hotels, just a few examples. And again, these are just 2 or 3 chains of hotels in Israel, but all of them, of course, are complying with that Purple Standard. And you see on the bottom right side, how every guest in a hotel gets a complimentary sanitizing kit. Everything is used as a kind of a marketing tool with the brands of the hotels. Everything is an important part of healthy visit to Israel, and everyone is joining that joint effort to really have a safe, a healthy sanitizing and reassuring experience when you visit whatever touristic part of the country. You can see on the bottom, in the top right part, how the check-in counter looks like. We're really working on doing it the best we can. Yeah, next slide shows you maybe one of the most important parts of Israel, the jewel of the crown are the different holy sites. You can see the Western Wall, you can see the Holy Sepulchre, you can see synagogues. COVID was unprecedented in the reality of Israel having to close down those holy sites that were never in modern history closed down. And we reopened everything together with the church, together with the holy sites, the Western Wall, the rabbi, and all that. You see how we sanitize everything. Everything is ready to go. Everyone's working together to keep it safe and healthy. I'm astonished by this slide specifically because seeing all those different religious leaders next to the Holy Sepulchre, next to all those holy sites with the sanitizing tools, this is just really astonishing. From our side, from the Israel Ministry of Tourism site, we are always updating. Our messaging now for all of you and for your clients as well is keep dreaming. Let's dream now and travel later. Let's first be safe, but then travel. Zahava is the first one to tell you, and she spoke about it earlier. It takes time to organize the trip, to arrange everything. So let's start now. Let's start dreaming now. Let's put that foot on the door right now with the religious leader, with the rabbi, with the pastor, with the head of that group, with that organization, because it's going to take time to materialize. So let's use this time now that we have to really dream, to really plan, and then we can really travel later. I really invite you all to follow us either on Facebook, on Instagram. We have great content that you can also use for your own marketing tools. And it's really free to use for you. Follow our hashtag inspired by Israel to get a lot of inspiring content. And as we are not selling anything, we're the government, of course, then it's for you to use and really to share with your clientele. And the next and the last slide would be all the other tools that we do offer online for you to use. If it's a different websites, the Israel travel is more of a general, even a little more Jewish kind of point of view of marketing and branding Israel. Then you have Holy Land Pilgrimage. It's a Christian website. It's more towards that market. Our Instagram, again, very inspiring, very visual. I really recommend following. And our Flickr photo gallery is hundreds of photos, free to use with full right for you to use really for your presentations and any marketing materials. So maybe kind of to tie everything together, whatever you need, ask us. We're here to assist you. We're here to help. We want to be frank with you. We're still not open for tourists, international tourists, but we are doing everything we can in order to be ready for when that switch changes, when the door opens, we'll be ready with open arms to receive you and your clients and everyone to this really inspiring destination. And I hope I didn't take too much of your time, but when I start talking, I just can't stop. This is an amazing destination, and I really, really hope that we're all gonna be able to visit there very soon. That's it. Thank you. And thanks again, Zahava, for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much, Anat. I've heard so many of your presentations, and each one was as if it was the first time I've heard it. And it is a very important, important information for us as travel in the travel industry. Thank you so much, Anat. Our next speaker is Amir Orly. I hope he's with us. He just texted me that he lost us. I hope
I'm still on.
Oh, all right. Okay, here we are. Thank you.
There was a technical problem. I lost connection. I lost internet twice during the presentation.
Okay.
So I'm picking it up on my phone.
Excellent.
And it might be that I will have to switch to my phone.
Okay, so let me introduce you. Let me introduce you to our valued travel agents. Amir was a guide, he's still working as a guide for 40 years. It's amazing. Amir has a lot of academic credentials. He is working, currently, he is working on his PhD. I must tell you that Amir has guided many of our clients. I mean to say your clients who has used our services. And he also has led our FEM trip to Israel early this year. So Amir, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. We are really looking forward for your presentation of Israel through the Jewish, I would say, heritage. Thank you very much.
So, hi everyone. Am I heard clearly?
Yes.
Okay. So, hi everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Amir Orly, born and raised in Israel. Actually, fourth generation Israeli. My great grandparents came here in 1909, the year Tel Aviv was established. So we're rooted in this country. I oftentimes say that this country was built by our fingers, as we, metaphorically speaking. Today, 6 generations later, because I'm the 4th generation, but I already have grandchildren, I can say that I personally, and we as a family, and we as a people, we take really great pride in what was achieved here. I'm working as a guide for the last 40 years, as Zahava mentioned before. And my original career started with the Israeli Society for Protection of Nature when I led environmental trips. Back at the time when the word environment really didn't exist yet. And then I moved on to the academia. I did a whole bunch of degrees in Jewish history. I have a degree in Jewish history, a couple of degrees in Bible. I have a master's degree in Hebrew literature. So I'm not telling all this to you because so you will think that I'm a great guy, although I am a great guy. That's a joke. I can hear you laugh. And basically, what I said yesterday to those of you who were with us yesterday is that the Israeli tour guiding industry, altogether tourist industry, but the Israeli tour guide industry is an academic profession. You have to go to a graduate school and take a program that is identical to an American master's graduate degree. It's a 2-year program with, at the end of it, there were many tests, and then you need to be licensed by the government. So I said this yesterday, I will repeat it today. Anybody ever been to Israel and used a tour guide would come back and say, I had the best guide in Israel. And it is true because the level of tour guiding in Israel is really academic level, but it's not only academic, of course. It's not only about the information. It's also about having an experience. When you come to Israel, especially as a Jewish person, you actually come to explore your own heritage. We relate to Israel for American travelers, and not only Americans, for Jews who come to visit here, as coming to your old country. You know, everyone in America has an old country, has a background where he or she came from, and Jews came from here. We left here, we as a nation, we are the people who left here thousands of years ago, but we never forgot. And that enabled us to come back home after 2,000 years and rebuild our country. And I decided to start this presentation with an overview of Jerusalem because really this was the collective memory of our people. It was my great-great-great-great-grandparents that prayed that please God, bring me back home and make it sooner if possible. And it was really my generation and my parents' generation that created it, and my generation that are here to pick the fruits. So Jerusalem is the focus of any Jewish tour. I think Jerusalem is the focus of any tour that comes to Israel, but today we're emphasizing on Jews. This is really the where it all started. So we have here on the left, on the top left picture, a slide of what Jerusalem looked in biblical time. It was a tiny, tiny little city, maybe, I don't know what, I would say 3,000 feet long and about 200 feet wide, on a small ridge surrounded by a wall, as you can see. And this was the site where Jerusalem started, who knows when, thousands and thousands of years ago. And this became the capital of the Jewish people after the time of King David. And that's why, and David actually was the one that renamed Jerusalem and called it City of David. You see on the top left, the word City of David really illustrates what Jerusalem looked like originally. The big picture shows the Museum of Jerusalem. It's at one time was a fortress built in medieval time, and now is an archaeological site, but also has different exhibitions about the history and the heritage and the folklore of Jerusalem. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we mentioned already about the City of David, and here we have some slides of that area. The bottom left is a little water pool that draws water from the spring of Jerusalem, that Gihon spring that is mentioned in the Bible. And the top right is I don't know if it's a boy or girl, walking in a tunnel that was dug by King Hezekiah, one of the descendants of King David in 7th century BC, to bring the water from the spring of Jerusalem to that pool where the children are sitting at. There also, as you can see, some other fun activities, Segway tours and rappelling. Let's go on, please. Jerusalem is a religious site for all religions. Of course, I mentioned today it's mainly focusing on Jews, so we can see at the top left the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, as it was in the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century, and the bottom right, and the bottom right is the Western Wall today. Basically the same place, but as you can see, it looks very different. After 1967, when the city was reunited after 19 years of being divided between Israel and Jordan, and there was a border like the Berlin Wall running along the center of it. The city was reunited in 1967, and today Israel is controlling the whole city. We respect all religions. So the bottom left is the Dome of the Rock, a Muslim big shrine that stands on what once was the site of the Jewish temple of Jerusalem. We respect all religions. Yesterday we spoke about Christians, and as you can see here, Muslims as well. So Israel takes very good care, as much as we can, of people that, although it's a Jewish country, of people who are not Jews as well. Let's move on, please. In the old city of Jerusalem that is surrounded by walls, we have 4 quarters: the Muslim, the Christian, the Armenian, and the Jewish. The Jewish quarter was the neighborhood where Jews lived for hundreds of years until they were deported in 1948 when Jordan took over. And then in 1967, when the city was reunited, Jews were reintroduced into the historical Jewish quarter. You can see the bottom right, it says Jewish Quarter Road. And I would say one of the highlights of tours of Old Jerusalem is the tour, especially for Jews, of the Jewish Quarter. Let's move on, please. Rabbi already mentioned before about spiritual tours to Israel Jews that come to celebrate family celebrations like bar mitzvah, weddings, and other things I'm not going to say much about because we already spoke about that. Let's move on. Besides being, an historical place and a religious place, Jerusalem is also the capital of modern Israel. We, as a civilization, as a people, as a nation, we are one of the oldest people on earth. We have records of Jews existing as a people already in biblical times, which is at least 2,500 years, probably more. But as a country, we are very young. And we base our system on 2 main pillars. Ethically and historically, and I would say religiously, we Jews, we rely on the ancient history of the Jews. But modernly, we are a democracy. So the country is run by a parliament. It's called Knesset. And the capital, of course, as it was in biblical time, is Jerusalem. And here we have the building of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament in Jerusalem. Just like in Washington, D.C., a capital is not only the government, it's also the, no, go ahead, it's good. It's not only the government, it's also the national heritage. And we have here a couple of pictures from the Israel Museum, which is kind of like identical to the American Smithsonian, where we keep the national cultural treasures. We have an archaeology wing. We have, as you can see here on the left, on the top left, a model of Jerusalem as it was 2,000 years ago. We have the big dome at the bottom left. It's the Shrine of the Book when we keep the Dead Sea Scrolls. Jerusalem as a capital also has the judicial wing of the government. So the bottom right is the building of the Israeli Supreme Court. Let's move on. So capital have basically three dimensions: the government, the heritage, the culture, the heritage, and the memory. In America, you have Arlington. We have Mount Herzl, which commemorates a couple of things. It commemorates the Holocaust, and what we have here is the Holocaust Main Memorial Campus. And I'm not saying Holocaust Museum because it's much more than a museum. There's also a museum in it, but there are other institutes to remember the Holocaust. It is called Yad Vashem. Let's move on another slide, please. And another site of Mount Herzl, the Memorial Mountain of Israel, is the military cemetery. I'm sure you all know that the reintroducing of Jews to this country did not happen peacefully. The people that lived here before would not let us come, although most of the country was empty, and we could definitely blend in and just work together and do this country one of the most prosperous countries on earth. The people that lived here while we were away did everything that they could and still are doing to get us out. So we literally paid with a lot of blood to maintain our life here. So the price that we paid is what you see on the top right, Israeli Military Cemetery on Mount Herzl. It's like the American Arlington. Let's move on, please. One of the historical monuments of Jerusalem is I would say one of the high-tech effort of Jerusalem back in the 1860s when Jerusalem started to grow was a windmill that was built by a Jewish philanthropist from England, Moses Montefiore, who brought the first wind-powered with a flour mill to Jerusalem, and today it's just a beautiful landmark in the middle of the city. Let's move on, please. Jerusalem, I mentioned already the history, I mentioned the religion, I mentioned the capital, the heritage, but it's also just a fun city. As you can see, the bottom right is a look over to the walls of the old city from the new part, and then the other two pictures are just streets of Jerusalem to give you an idea of what it looks like. Everyday life for us is we're not living only the history, we're living a good life here. Some other slides of modern Jerusalem. You can see that it has good public transportation. Maybe an interesting aspect is that by law, all buildings have to be built with the Jerusalem stone. So you can see both the picture on the right and the picture on the left, the special architecture of buildings in Jerusalem. Let's move on another one. And of course, one of the most famous tourist sites, as well as a place for Israelis to visit, is the Machane Yehuda market. We have a whole bunch of tours about markets in Israel, and those of you who will be with us tomorrow, when we'll talk about family tours, we will say more about all kind of possibilities of visiting markets and participating in cooking workshops and just mingling with Israelis. But just for now, let's just enjoy, the colorful market of Jerusalem, Machane Yehuda. And from Jerusalem, we'll move from the very old to the very new. Tel Aviv, Yafo. Tel Aviv is Israel. It's not the capital, but it's kind of like New York or Los Angeles for America. This is where modern Israel, more liberal Israel. If Jerusalem is more traditional, Tel Aviv is definitely much more liberal, much more open, much more cosmopolitan. And Tel Aviv is actually the new city of Jaffa, a biblical city that, as Jerusalem is thousands and thousands of years old. Jaffa always was known by its port. It's mentioned in the Bible. What we see here is the core, the heart of old Jaffa. I think the picture was taken at the beginning of the last century, in the early 1900s. Let's move to the next picture. Shane. And you can see on the top right, Jaffa from a distance, the same place from a distance as it is today. On the bottom, on the left side, some of the alleyways of Yafo. Yafo was rebuilt after Israel was established as an artist colony. And every door that you can see here is actually an art gallery. Artists live above their shops on the second floors. And it's a wonderful walking tour of Old Yafo to visit artists, to talk to them, to see what they do, and to interact with them. Let's move on, please. And from Yafo, we move on to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was started as a suburb of Yafo. It was Yafo was a small town surrounded by an, I would say, ocean of sand. And it wasn't developed. It was never in the history of the world was developed. In 1909, as you can see on the right-hand side, a group of 66 Jewish families from Yafo bought the land together. And what we see here is an interesting picture of what of the first gathering of this group on the land that was going to become Tel Aviv. When they bought the land, they divided it. They took a piece of paper, they drew a map of what Tel Aviv was going to look like, the suburb was going to look like. They divided it to 66 plots. And what we have here is a lottery where each family was assigned to a plot. The way that they did it was very interesting. They assigned a child from the community to run to the seashore and collect 120 seashells. Half of them would be white and half of them would be gray. On the gray ones, they wrote the numbers of the plots, and on the right ones, they wrote the family names. And then they picked one white and one gray, and this is how the plots were divided between the settlers. So this is what Tel Aviv looked like on the day of its establishment, and this is about 20 years later. As you can, even 10 years later, 1919, Tel Aviv is already way more than just a suburb. You can see that we already have some high rises. We have what is called the boulevard, a park in the middle of the street. I think the date here, 1919, is not correct. It should be 1929 because there are already cars here. 1919, there weren't any cars. So let's say this is 20 years later after the first picture. Let's move to the next one, please. And this is what it looks like today. The same boulevard still exists, but instead of being a suburb of 66 families, it's Israel's second biggest city after Jerusalem, with about 500,000 residents living in Tel Aviv, and then many, many others living in satellite towns around Tel Aviv. So as I said, it's the center of modern Israel. Business, high-tech, culture, but it really all started in one educational, no, it's good. Stay there. It all started in one educational institution that brought my great-grandparents into this country. When a nation is establishing itself, or I would say, making itself reborn, it needs a country, but it also needs a lot of other things. And one of the things that had to be called from the past was the Hebrew language. Jews spoke hundreds of languages wherever they were in every part of the world, but Hebrew was the ancient language that they only used in synagogues, they only used in liturgy. They never really used as an everyday language, and it had to be revived. And the way they revived it is through education. And what we have here is the first Hebrew-speaking high school on earth. And it was built in Tel Aviv back at the time when Tel Aviv was established in 1909. And that's why my great-grandparents came with 5 children. Among them was my grandmother. She was 9 at the time, so she could study in the school. So from early time, Hebrew was introduced through the education system. And this building that doesn't exist anymore is a landmark in the rebirth of the Jewish nation. Let's move on, please. Today, Tel Aviv is a very, very modern city. It's one of the, I would say, the capital of the world, so to speak, like New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, London, and others. As you can see, it's already mentioned, it's a business center, but it's on the Mediterranean, so it has a beautiful beach, a lot of sports, a lot of activities, outdoors activities. And the weather is fine. In the summer, it's a little hot, but during the other month, it's very, very comfortable. So you can see that a a lot of people are enjoying the outdoors. Let's move on, please. Yeah, Israel was established. Israel as a country was established in 1948. The Declaration of Independence, although Jerusalem is our capital, the Declaration of Independence was read by David Ben-Gurion in Tel Aviv because it was during the war and Jerusalem was under a siege and wasn't accessible. They used the auditorium of a museum that was in Tel Aviv at the time, this is the building as it looks today. It was a museum, but it is now called the Independence Hall, and one of the most of the, I would say, the must. When Jewish tourists come to Israel, this is the place to visit. Like when you go to, let's say, Philadelphia, and you visit the old capital of the Union. We visit here to learn about the beginning of Israel, the Independence Hall. Let's move on. Yeah, and a little bit again of outdoors life in Israel. You can see the Mediterranean in twilight, some of the outdoors restaurants and cafe, the promenade. I think I said enough about that. Let's move on. And we move on, you can see on the map on your right, we move on along the coast to Haifa. Haifa is the third biggest city in Israel. It's, in a way, I compare it to Los Angeles, to San Francisco, because it's on a hill, on a mountain. The mountain itself is called Carmel. And at the bottom, there is not only the Mediterranean, but there's also the Israel's biggest port, seaport, as you can see in the middle picture. Haifa is mostly known for a couple of things. First, for its beautiful view. Second, it is the world center for the Baha'i religion. I'm not going to say much about the Baha'i religion, but it's a new religion established about 200 years ago by a man that called himself a prophet, Baha'u'llah. And he decided that Haifa was the city of God, and the Baha'is today, they're quite a big religion all over the world. They chose Haifa to be their world center. So the picture on the very left side of the screen are the Baha'i gardens with the big Baha'i shrine in the middle of it. The picture in the middle is the same gardens at daytime from the top towards the bottom. Let's move on, please. You know what? Go back just one slide. I'm sorry, I forgot. Haifa is also known for another thing. It is a center of technical education. There is one institute in Haifa called Technion that was established also in the very, very early 1900s. And it is compared to the American MIT. The Technion is a very beautiful place for people to visit. If anyone is interested in science, in high tech, in development, Technion, they have a nice visitor center that we can also visit and talk a little bit about, you know, modern Israel in this aspect. Let's move on, please. From Haifa, we move a little bit further back south to one of the original Israeli settlements, or Jewish settlements, I would say, that were built in this country in the mid-1800s, the 1880s. Jews started to flock back into their country. The country was, I would not say it was totally empty, but was pretty much empty. There was not a lot of empty land to purchase. There was a small group of Jews from Romania. They bought the land at the top of Mount Carmel, not too far from Haifa, and started a small agricultural community. You can see on the top left pictures from the early years. The main industry of Zichron Yaakov was from the beginning wine. They had wineries. They're supported by another Israeli philanthropist, Rothschild. He built the wineries here. They still operate until today. So the two pictures at the bottom, the one on the right is the historical vineyard, and the one on the left in the same cellars, the vineyard as it is today. Israel, although it's not one of the greatest wine countries on earth, but it's a very, very interesting wine destination for people who love wine, because we have over 400 wineries in the country. Stay back for one minute. Thank you. Israel's climate is very interesting. We have so many climates, so we can have a great variety of grapes and any great variety of wines. The reason Israel is not known for wine is because it's a small country and can't produce quantity. So if you come here and you try the wine, it wins first prizes backwards and forward all the time, but it's not so famous in the world, basically because we don't have a lot to ship. Let's move on to the next one, to the next slide. This picture brings us back to the years 1945 to 1948. Right after the Holocaust and even during the Holocaust, Jews who became refugees in their own countries in Europe tried to get out. At that time, Israel was occupied by Great Britain and they would not let Jews in. So Jews had to sneak in, and they used all kinds of illegal boats that they purchased in Europe, and they tried to break the British blockade. Some of them made it in. Others were captured by the British and were kept in detention camps in different parts of the country. One of those detention camps became a museum. That's the top left, the top picture on the left. When refugees, Jewish refugees that were captured by the British, they tried to come in as illegal immigrants, were detained by the British in a place called Atlit. And today it's a museum. We can move on one slide. And we could see Atlit back at the time on the left, and the museum today, the same place. This is really the sanitation hut, where those refugees first came to the camp. They were forced to take a shower. For many of them, it was a good, first shower after a long trip. But for many of them, it was very traumatic because the showers in Auschwitz were not really showers. So when the British really forced those people into the showers, a lot of them thought that they're going towards their death. So this is also a very important site for Jewish trips to visit in Israel. Let's move on. I noticed that I go way over my time, so I'll try to make it short. And Zahava, when it's becoming too much, just I'll kick my knee and tell me to move on. We're moving north from Haifa to Akko. Akko is not exactly a Jewish site, but it's an interesting old city. I can see on the bottom left an aerial picture of a peninsula. That was the old city of Akko. Akko, like Yafo, was a port city, and for thousands of years was one of the gates into this country, especially to the north of the country. It's bordering with Lebanon. A little bit north of Akko is already Lebanon. What is really interesting in Akko is the archaeological excavations that they did there. And they found underground a city from medieval time, a full city standing from medieval time, from the time when this country was occupied by the Crusaders. And you can see on the top left, one of the streets of Crusader times. Let's move on, please. We're moving to Sfat. Sfat is a very, very important Jewish center in the north of the country, in the area called Galilee. Sfat was a center of mysticism known as Kabbalah. I'm not going to speak much about Kabbalah, but this is I would say, a mystical way of practicing Judaism. It's not the mainstream practice, but it's becoming very popular in America too, especially after Madonna discovered it and started to practice it. So Sfat was a center of Kabbalah, of mysticism from 16th century. A small group of Kabbalist practitioners came and settled here when this was a small village. And today's Sfat, like Yafo, became also a center of art. So the combination between art and Jewish mysticism really makes Sfat a very unique place. In tomorrow's presentation, I'm going to talk about what can families do in Sfat. So those of you who are going to join tomorrow, we're going to come back here. Let's move on. And now we move to the lake, the only freshwater lake in Israel, called Kinneret. It is known for Christians as the Sea of Galilee. Yesterday in the Christian presentation, we spoke a lot about Jesus being here because he, at the time, had his ministry. You know that Jesus, or some of you might know that Jesus practiced ministry as a rabbi for 3 years here by the Sea of Galilee. So for Christians, this is a very holy site. For us, it's mainly, it serves two purposes. It's one of the main sources of drinking water for the whole country. We draw water from the lake and we distribute it to all homes of Israel. We all drink the water of Kinneret, but it's also the only place in Israel where you can actually have recreation activity in fresh water. So these are the pictures that you see here of Lake Kinneret. Israel also have one river. We have the chutzpah to call this little creek a river. Again, I'm going back to yesterday's presentation because some of you may have heard me yesterday. When Americans read the Bible in America, not only Americans, Europeans as well, read the Bible out of Israel, they picture the Jordan River as a huge river, something like, let's say, the Mississippi or the Colorado or the Hudson. And what you can see here is it's a little trickle. The reason is that Israel is a very dry country. We don't get a lot of rain. And so there's not a lot of fresh water, but especially in springtime, after the snow melts, River Jordan really becoming even a little bit rough. You can see a little bit of white water on the left. And together of it being holy to Christians, it is also a place for us just for having fun. The Jewish families come here, Jewish tourists come here for recreation and for fun, basically. Let's move on, please. North of Lake Kinneret, there is an area that used to be, until not long ago, a big area of swamps. And millions of birds, while their migration from Europe to Africa, would stop for overnight in the swamps just to refuel and to continue on. In the 1950s, Israel drained the swamps, but left a little area as a nature reserve. And there is a whole bunch of outdoors activities, watching birds, as you can see here, but also other kind of family fun, biking and other things. Tomorrow again, we're going to come back here and talk about what families can do in this area. Let's move on. What is this?
Golan Heights.
Golan Heights, I'm sorry. I was, yeah, Golan Heights is east. It's the only place that Israel has east of the Jordan River. You can see it on the map at the top right. And Golan Heights borders with Syria. So a lot of people would say, is it safe to go there? The answer is yes. Golan Heights did not see any act of violence in the last 40 years. The last word that we had here was 1973. And since then, the place is extremely quiet, very peaceful. During the time when Syria had its civil war, sometimes when you came near the border, you can actually look straight into Syria. We could even see some echoes of the fighting. And the Golan Heights, once again, tomorrow we'll talk more about it, has all kinds of activities, such as, for instance, jeep tours and hiking and other things that families can do or people that are a little bit more active can do here. And also, of course, learn about global relationship between Israel and its neighbors. Now we take a very, very long, in Israeli terms, very long is an hour drive or 2-hour drive from the Golan Heights down to the area of the Dead Sea. And what we see here is one of the, I would say, national heritage sites called Masada. This was, I would say, remain of another war that took place between the Jews and the Romans. Back at the time, this country was occupied by the ancient Roman Empire, and Jews were fighting the war of independence against the Romans, but they lost. And the last stronghold that the Jews had in Israel before they were completely destroyed was Masada. And today is one of the main sites of Jewish, not only Jews, to visit. So back at the time, we used to hike up Masada. Today, still you can hike, but there's also other ways to get there. You can see the modern cable car that take you up to the top of the mountain in 5 minutes. And Masada is located near the Dead Sea. Let's move on to the next picture, please. The Dead Sea is the saltiest body of water on Earth. It's also the lowest place on Earth. It is known for all kinds of qualities, mainly for the fact that the water is so salty that nothing could live in it. No life can actually survive in the Dead Sea. But very, I would say, what's the word? I'm looking for a word here. But very strangely, it is very good for our skin. The minerals that are in the water and in the mud of the Dead Sea are very good for our skin. So they do also all kind of cosmetics from Dead Sea products. And another interesting thing about the Dead Sea is that you cannot sink. You see this lady here lying on the water reading a paper as if she was sitting on a mattress. Let's move on, please. And then if you look on the map on the right, just at the center of southern Israel, I would say more than half of the whole country is a desert. And the main desert, we have a couple of deserts, but the main desert in Israel called Negev. It's all the triangle from the Dead Sea down to the very bottom. And it's a very, very different area. There are few tourist spots in the Negev, but also one of the most important, I would say, as far as Jewish history, is that this is where David Ben-Gurion, our first prime minister and the founding father of Israel, decided to retire. He joined a small community in the middle of the Negev called Sde Boker, and he lived there for about, I would say, 20 years after he retired. Him and his wife and both died there, and both are buried there. So you can see at the very center of the screen the graves of David and Paula Ben-Gurion, and then all around some pictures of the environment around. Let's move on. I think we are already getting to the end. Yep, this is the end of our tour. It ends at the very bottom of Israel, in Israel's tropical sea, also known as the Red Sea, and the city of Eilat. It's really kind of like a miniature of Las Vegas without the gambling. Gambling is illegal in Israel, but we have many hotels, and you can see a picture here, a lot of recreation, a lot of sea activity. But one thing that Las Vegas doesn't have, a wonderful, wonderful marine life. It's a tropical sea, so we have corals and colorful fishes. You can do all kind of underwater trips. Again, tomorrow we're going to talk more about it. Here we can see just some example of water activities that you can do in Eilat, and it's a very fun destination for vacation, especially the tour of Israel. If you do it seriously, it's very tiring. It's a combination of fun and study. You basically wake up early in the morning, or not so early, but you wake up in the morning and you go all the way until the evening. After 8 days of touring, you're exhausted. So ending a tour in Eilat and kind of like taking 2 or 3 days of relaxation would be a good idea. Eilat is also a good hub to go to Egypt and to Jordan. Those two countries, Israel has peace treaty with. And so Egypt is at the bottom of the map and to the left. Jordan is on the right. And so from Eilat, there are a lot of one-day trip to Petra, for instance, in Jordan. And a lot of people would take the extension and just go see one of those World Heritage sites in Jordan, Petra. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope I did not take too much of your time, and thank you for listening, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Amir. Once again, I know that we are a little bit behind, but I think that information is really important information for us to take. Once again, it is when travel agents are calling us, it is always important to qualify your client. When they go to visit, they would like to visit Israel. You may ask, what is the reason you would like to visit Israel? If they will tell you, you know, my parents visited Israel, I grew up as a Jewish person, and I really would like to see Israel with the Jewish focus, I would say. These are some of the highlights. We only gave you the highlights. There is so much more to see of sites that you may you may don't know about them, such as Athlete, such as the Independence Hall with a beautiful museum. It's one of the most incredible museums. And the Golan Heights, where you see the settlements, great industry that was built there, wine industry, and so on and so forth. The Jordan River, definitely Jerusalem, the Negev that was revived and was built since Israel was established, where you see today beautiful cities such as Be'er Sheva, the tomb of Ben Gurion, who inspired, was the first Prime Minister of Israel. So these are really important sites to put in your, to make sure to include in your itinerary to make it more, I would say, designed for your clients. Let's take a few minutes to answer a few of the questions. Shane, can you go over the questions, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna start reading some of the Q&A, but if you have a question that you've been holding on to, or if you have anything you'd like to ask, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. I'm gonna start with, here we go. Oh, that one was just a comment. This person has Israel on their bucket list and they're excited to go. One more, here's the question.
There was a question, if you don't mind, I will interact until, there was a question about the group, someone who wanted to do a group for Israel. I just want to let you know that we are working closely with our groups to Israel. We do provide excellent services for groups. And once again, we would design the itinerary for your specific groups. If you tell us, listen, it's a temple group, so we know what to do. And even sometimes, you should ask the rabbi, what is the emphasis? And we really work together toward creating the group, forming, the itinerary, and making sure that this is the experience that the rabbi or the pastor would like to have in Israel. So definitely we do groups. We offer presentations for you as a travel agents to the temple or to the group, so we can help you to sell the product as well as collateral material. So absolutely, please email me for any group.
Yeah, what is, to follow that up, what is the process of beginning a group and what do you recommend in finding groups?
Once again, I spoke about it yesterday. I always tell travel agents, don't wait for your phone call from a rabbi, or I think that you have to be proactive. You have to be proactive by reaching out to the churches that are even 5 miles radius from you, to temples, to organizations, to many other sectors. Be involved. Try to go to networking. That's how you start your relationship, I would say. And I think that the most important, as a travel agent, the most important thing is to really, once you have a request, to understand that you have to work with a very reliable tour operator who will give you the right product. And it is especially important for Israel. I cannot tell you countless times of travel agents who came to me with an itinerary that was designed for as a Christian tour, and actually it was the clients were Jewish, and it happened to me many times. So you really have to qualify your client before even contacting us. Once you clarify your client and you know your client and you give us some details, we will make sure to design the right itinerary for you. But I strongly recommend to really be proactive in order to reach out to leaders and the pipers in order to create groups. I hope that it answers your question.
Yeah, okay, so then the next question is it possible to re-see these webinars? I can take that one.
Yes.
So we're gonna be sending this out as a replay to follow up each of the webinars from this 3-webinar series, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And then also if you go to iworldoftravel.com/videos, you'll see we have 3 sections in our video library. One for destination marketing videos you can use to inspire clients and things like that. The next is like these webinars, destination marketing education. And then the other would be direct advisor education. Like we have tips on selling group and FIT up on the site. So if you go to iworldoftravel.com/videos, you'll see our entire library, and all of the webinars we've done so far will be up there, and including this week's. And then, and then also you'll get a replay in your email just to have it as well.
Yes, we do. There was a question about airlines. We do. You can book with us air too. We have partners we are working with, and they are working with major airlines, in particular airlines that are very strong with Israel, Turkish airline, United, American Airlines, and definitely El Al as our national airline. Absolutely. Do you have, yeah.
I think one last question, it seems, do we have Spanish guides, or what are our options for other languages?
Yes, we do, not only Spanish, also other languages. We do offer We do offer tours with Spanish. If you have a close group and the group is a Spanish-speaking group, so we do offer Spanish-speaking guides, and the operation itself that will be in Spanish. I mean to say, the itinerary will be written in Spanish, and the entire operation will be in Spanish. We have a division for Spanish-speaking clients. You can do it for groups and for FITs, absolutely.
That seems to be all the questions we have currently.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Rabbi Blazer. Thank you, Amir. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you, Anat. We will see you tomorrow. I hope the webinar today gave you some tools because there is so much that we can cover to really see the aspect of the Jewish traveler. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Enjoy the day, stay safe. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe.